My name is Andrew. I am the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of BlockFuse. So I'm not the CTO. I actually don't code. So don't ask me any questions about coding. Just kidding. But yeah, and then so BlockFuse, our goal is to enable use cases on top of Bitcoin and Litecoin. But before we get started, just wanted to thank TJ for Open Up Learning Fuse and VJ for inviting me to speak at JavaScript LA. And then, yeah, so I also have candy, I guess. VJ provided them. If you guys have any questions throughout the night as I talk about stuff and you guys want to ask a question, feel free to go ahead and I'll throw candy at you. So maybe that's some incentive. It'll be like a block reward, right, per question.
Thank you to TJ for also kind of coming through with the candy.
Hey. That's what Halloween is all about. Yeah. Oh, side note, VJ told me it was going to be a costume party. That's why I'm decked out in Litecoin gear. So I'm not like a crazy Litecoin fanatic guy. It's just, it's VJ's fault. So a little bit about myself. I go by a pseudonym on Twitter called eCurrencyHodler. I'm also on Reddit. And I'm a volunteer at the Litecoin Foundation and started this company with my friend Patrick Walters. And we've been doing this since about April. And our goal is just to make Litecoin and Bitcoin app development easy. And we do that through our open source development platform, and it's called Coinmesh. All right, now, before we talk about Coinmesh, I just kind of wanted to briefly introduce to you how Bitcoin works, what it is. And you know, earlier I kind of asked you guys if you guys heard of Bitcoin, so I feel pretty confident that you guys know what it is and how it works, so that's pretty encouraging. But we'll just go through like a high-level introduction of what Bitcoin is, right? I would kind of just say, like on a very basic level for the purposes of our presentation today, Bitcoin is a network, and at the same time, it's a distributed ledger. And so Bitcoin is many things, and it's actually very in-depth, and if we wanted to go into like how the consensus mechanism works, we could. Maybe we'll have like a separate meetup to talk about that, but for now, let's just say that Bitcoin is a network, and it is a distributed ledger. So let's talk about Bitcoin as a network. Now, in this network, there's something called nodes. And nodes are what you use to access or interact with the network, right? And so your node is responsible for sending transactions, for relaying transactions, and downloading what we call blocks. And so you need a node in order to interact with the network. And so as you see in this picture, there's two different types of people. And then the gray's data storehouse things, that is representative of a node on the Bitcoin network. And then as you see in this picture that there are two groups of people. There are users and there are miners. Miners, they process transactions. And so they pick up transactions, they stick it in a block, and then that's how your transactions get recorded in Bitcoin. But users, what users do is they send transactions, they broadcast transactions. Those relay broadcasts, you can use those interchangeably. And so if I were to send 1 Bitcoin to VJ, what I would do is I would use my node to relay a transaction to the Bitcoin network. And so what it does is it sends it out to the nodes that it's connected to, and then those nodes say that, oh, I'm sending VJ 1 Bitcoin. It's sending those out to the other nodes that they're connected to, and it just keeps getting distributed out throughout the whole network until a miner finds this transaction. And when a miner finds this transaction, what he does is he picks it up and he puts it in something called a block. Now, the size of a block is about 1 megabytes. So a miner, what he can do is he can fill this block with as many transactions as he wants, or as he can, up until 1 megabyte. Now, there's this new technology called SegWit that was implemented last year. It technically can increase block sizes up to 3.4 megabytes, but that's just, or 3.7, but that's kind of, for the purpose of simplicity's sake, let's just say it's 1 megabyte, okay? So what a miner does is once he creates this 1 megabyte block, it's filled with transactions, he then submits it to the network. And what happens is it gets distributed throughout the whole network. And so this is where the power of like distributed ledger technology comes from. It's everybody gets a copy of this block, right? And the ledger, or what people call a blockchain, it gets updated. It gets updated with the most recent transactions that are found in this 1 megabyte block. And this in Bitcoin, it's set to about 10 minutes. So this happens at a repeat cycle for about 10 minutes on average. Now this is important because everybody has the same copy of the transaction. So all these nodes that you see in this network, these are what we would call full nodes, and they have every single transaction throughout the whole history of Bitcoin. And so this is important because all these nodes have to agree, and they're verifying with one another that the transactions are consistent. If they're not consistent, then their blocks and the information that they're sending out actually gets rejected, and it falls outside of the network. It falls out of the network. Now, so this is why, so the whole process of block submission, distribution, and everyone having a copy is why some people would characterize Bitcoin or call it like a distributed ledger. Now, one way to think about blocks is kind of like folders. I've kind of used this analogy before. And so if you imagine a block as a folder, and in this folder is just a record of every single transaction that the miner filled in this folder, right? But as a miner submits another block, another folder gets added to the chain, to the blockchain, to the ledger. And so it keeps growing over longer and longer and longer. And the cool thing is, though, that is you can go back in history, you can go back to the older folders, you can pull it out, open it up, and say, oh, what happened on January 1st, 2016? Like, who paid who what? And then so what you'll see is actually recorded in that transaction a specific, like, this address and this address, 1 Bitcoin. And so it's open, it's free, it's transparent, and that's one of the powers of Bitcoin, the superpowers of Bitcoin, I would say, because it's Halloween. And so this is why, and the great thing about this is that it doesn't leverage any network. It doesn't use Visa. It doesn't use any traditional infrastructure at all. Like it's self-contained. It's its own network, and that's why it's so powerful because no single person can necessarily usurp or thwart or change the ledger that we talked about before because it's distributed. So if one person tries to change the ledger, like if this node tries to say, okay, let's change some transactional history in the past, and they try to submit it to the whole network, it would get rejected because it's not consistent with what everybody in the network is saying. No, like that's not part of our record history. Okay. And so in this way, that's one of the ways that Bitcoin actually remains censorship resistant. So now that so that's kind of like a brief introduction to Bitcoin and how it works. So let's go back to Bitcoin as a network. As you saw in this picture, you require a node in order to interact with the network. You need a node to send Bitcoin. You need a node to check to see if you receive Bitcoin. You need a node to relay blocks or to download blocks and to host the full node, the full blockchain. And so if you want to build an application on top of Bitcoin or Litecoin, you need a node to interact with. You need a node to leverage. Now, thankfully, these nodes are free. All right, it's open source. You can download them on GitHub, and anybody can use it. And so that's awesome because some stuff you got to pay for, right? Like some apps you have to download and pay a price, but this is absolutely free. But even though it is free, the problem is that the space is so new, and we're still so early on in this technology, is that there's not a lot of tooling services that really help developers. There's not a lot of environments that'll be created or set up for you so that you can get straight to coding or building out your project. You have to compile the node yourself. You have to look at the documentation online, and that can be an absolute nightmare, especially in blockchain space because they're constantly iterating. They're constantly making sure or changing things, making it more efficient. And so documentation that is out today, maybe in 1 month, 2 months, it immediately becomes outdated, right? And so I've heard of stories of people trying to assemble a Lightning Network node, and the documentation was out in like February of 2018, and he's so frustrated because he's following these steps to the T, but it's like not working. And I told him, dude, that's just outdated. But he's like, no, it was in February, and I was like telling him, no, like it has changed significantly since the last time this was put out. And the travesty is that like people aren't really good gatekeepers or record keepers of their documentation, right? Like people will put out an article and they'll put out the steps, but maybe they don't update it with the most with the best practices that are now in the industry. And so I kind of liken this whole process to buying a couch at IKEA. All right. So has anybody ever bought a couch at IKEA? No? Yeah? Okay, TJ, thanks. All right, cool. So, like, the whole process is kind of like you go into IKEA and there's this beautiful couch, and you're like, oh yeah, I totally want to buy this couch. But when they deliver it to you, it's like in this brown box, and you've got to assemble it yourself, right? And sometimes the instructions that they give to you is like in a different language. Like I've received instructions in Swedish, in German, and then so I'm kind of left there looking at the pictures that they have and trying to follow step by step what's going on. And then I'm like, okay, is this nail the nail that's like matching up with this picture? But I have like 5 different size nails, so I don't even know if this is the right size. And then, you know, let's say I figure out how to compile everything together and I'm missing this one peg. And I finally sit down on the couch and then boom, it breaks, right? And so it's an entirely frustrating process of like trying to follow documentation and trying to assemble your couch. What if it was possible for you to use a tablet? A tablet, and in this tablet you can kind of select and choose what you want, right? You can choose where the couch came from, who made it, the color of the couch, how big the couch is, and then you push enter, and all of that just gets assembled and it gets delivered right to your door, and the best part is that it's free. And so that's what Coinmesh does for you as a developer. It assembles these Litecoin and Bitcoin nodes, and it automates those nodes and the adapter layers so that you can go straight to building out your project fast. So I just kind of wanted to talk about how we conceptualize a application stack from a blockchain perspective, just because I think it's helpful, and so that you guys understand what Coinmesh does and where you enter into this whole equation. And so we kind of conceptualize an application stack in 4 layers. There's the data source, there's the adapter, the logic service, and the client-side application. So the data source, this is actually your node, your Bitcoin node, your Litecoin node. That's what the data source is. And then your adapter is, what we do is we provide a common API interface that talks to the data source and the logic service. And so they're all speaking the same language. And so if I want to use Bitcoin D or Litecoin D, it's okay because it all fits under the same adapter. Your logic service is kind of where you as a developer come in, and this is where you start laying out the foundations of your project on top of Bitcoin or on top of Litecoin. And then after that, you have the client-side application. This is what the end user sees. This is what your customer or whoever is using your application, that's what they see, the client-side application. And so Coinmesh's role in these 4 layers is essentially to automate the data source and the adapter layer so that you as a developer can go straight to the logic service. Okay? And right now, it's only in JavaScript, hence I'm speaking to you guys at JavaScript LA or OC. But it's actually through HTTP, so we can consume any language via HTTP. Sorry, VJ, that you guys can't have the market here. What is Coinmesh? So in a nutshell, Coinmesh is basically a lightweight integrated development environment. I'm going to do a short demo for you guys, and you'll see how it has some buttons and stuff that will help you navigate how to generate blocks and set up your environment. And it also automates the nodes for you and the adapter layers, and so that's how it kind of acts as a lightweight IDE. It's also a community of shared libraries. And so what this means is that as people use Coinmesh to build their tools, to build their projects, it's actually very, very easy to share your project with another person who's using Coinmesh. All they've got to do is just mount that project and boom, they're good to go. And then they can integrate it into whatever project that they're working on. And so we kind of see this as like a powerful community or a library that will just really help facilitate the growth of app development in Bitcoin and Litecoin. It's self-hosted. We don't do software as a service. It's free. You host it on your computer. You can put it on AWS if you want, but you control full ownership of this, and it's all on you. And then finally, it's open source. We believe in open source. We want things to be free. We want anybody to be able to access our tools and our libraries because we want to make. When I talk about Bitcoin and Litecoin. I really believe in it. I really believe it's going to make the world a better place. And so for me, it was, and for my partner, it was really important that we make this open source. We've had a lot of people try to tell us, hey, like you should try to license this out. But yeah, I feel like that would just kind of defeat the purpose. And so, yeah, maybe that'll be at the end of the slide. So do you guys have any questions so far? Yeah, what's your question?
How do you make money if it's open source?
Great question. We're going to build revenue positive crypto services on top of Coinmesh. So we're going to be competing with you guys to make money. But we have an advantage because we're like, we know the industry, we're versed, and we know our platform, but we also want to empower you guys as well to build your own stuff that you guys can make money out of, like, and start creating revenue.
Okay, so you're going to be creating your own apps using this.
Yes.
And that's how you're going to make money.
Yeah, and we're all going to be working together. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
All the coins, how did you pick Litecoin?
Yeah. So I've been a fan of Litecoin. Like my personal story behind why I believe Litecoin is so Charlie Lee, like he wrote this article about like how he saw the future of Litecoin and how of like adding SegWit and the future of atomic swaps in 2017. I was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure. Like I really think Bitcoin is kind of the standard right now. And then like I think in like June or April or May, that's when they added SegWit. And then I saw, Litecoin get added onto Coinbase. And I was like, man, like this guy is actually, he's backing up his words. So like Litecoin implemented SegWit first, and there was this whole drama between like, should we increase the block size? Should we just add SegWit? And basically Litecoin kind of, from my perspective, Litecoin helped add SegWit onto Bitcoin. And I just saw this kind of symbiotic relationship between Litecoin and Bitcoin, right? And so Bitcoin, it's kind of limited in terms of like how much transactions it can process. But through the Lightning Network, the Litecoin will be like a cheaper on-ramp to the Lightning Network. I believe people will want to settle in Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, but like Litecoin will always be cheaper in fees because that is the block times are 4 times as fast, so the meme pool gets cleared faster. So that generally means there's less competition for transaction fees, and so that's kind of like why I feel pretty confident about like the Bitcoin Litecoin aspect of that. And also, the code base is so similar. So like it's fairly easy to kind of support both coins. Yeah. Oh, here you go. Good catch. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Nope. Yeah, what's your question?
How do you deal with like hard forks?
How do we deal with hard forks? Can you explain that?
When a couple years ago, I remember like a lot of people talking about SegWit,
Yeah.
scalability, and threatening like, oh, we're gonna split Bitcoin off into like Bitcoin Cash and then just Bitcoin Unlimited.
Yeah.
So when they do form, like, do you have to consider like already account for that as well, or do you just keep focusing on Bitcoin and Litecoin?
Yeah, so our platform, actually, we can support pretty much, if there's a cryptocurrency out there that's like very similar in code base to Bitcoin, like we can add support like pretty easily onto our platform. So if people do want to build off of a Bitcoin fork, like we might be open to integrating that into our platform. But yeah. Hard fork game theory is a whole different lecture and topic. Cool. So I saw another person raise a hand. No? Yeah. Yeah.
Can you explain what a hard fork is?
Yeah. Hard fork is. There are different definitions of hard forks. But basically, how I define a fork in general is that so you have code, and if somebody alters the code, it's a fork. Okay, and then so you now have like 2 different versions of the blockchain because one person decided to change something in the protocol. Okay, and so that's a fork. A hard fork means that you have replay protection, and so that there are 2 completely separate networks. So like one of the issues last year when BCH forked that people were kind of freaking out about was if I send Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network and BCH doesn't have replay protection, then my Bitcoin can go into BCH, right? And so that's one example of like what a hard fork is. But it's kind of like where all the other nodes get kind of like that don't follow your newly adopted rules. They no longer are relevant to your network, and so you'll inevitably have a chain split because not everybody is going to update their nodes. You'll obviously have people who want to update to the new protocol, And so it's kind of like a dicey topic, and why people in Bitcoin are just so very conservative, and they're like, we should soft fork everything. Soft fork means like it's backwards compatible. That means like if you change a protocol, it exists in this new set of rules, but it also exists in the old set of rules. So for example, an example of a soft fork is, let's say 1 megabyte blocks, right? I can soft fork a block like 500 or 0.5 megabyte blocks. It still fits and exists within the old consensus mechanism because it's within the 1 megabytes. But you have like people who are running new nodes that are enforcing 0.5 megabyte blocks. And so that's an example, but it's a new rule, right? It's no longer 1 megabyte, it's a new rule. And so that's how you have, it's backwards compatible with the old network because it fits within the same rules. Yeah. Yes.
It looks like that Litecoin peaked in around 2017.
Yes.
Roughly, what, $350 a share?
Yes.
For a Litecoin. What's saying that it's going to go back up? It seems like it's been on a steady decline since then.
Yeah, I'm not like too big into price speculation. I truly believe in the technology behind it. But I will just kind of briefly say that we are in a bear market. Like everything is down. There's not a single coin that has been positive since like December, right? And so it's just, to me, it's just a natural market cycle because when it reached $350 or so, that was insane. That was just pure hype, and just people were elated, right? And people, yeah. So I just kind of feel that it is a kind of a normal market correction for us to go from like 350 and like back down to like where it's at now. Yeah. And so we'll see what the market says. That's the true market indicator.
Is that a risk for you since there's no really regulatory people behind it? There's nothing that's really like regulating the processes of what it can actually do in terms of the volatility. It sounds like almost it's a little volatile. I know Bitcoin last year also took a hit. So.
Yeah, tell me more about like what you mean by nobody's regulating it.
Well, I mean like the SEC regulates financial trading.
Right.
Right. So what regulatory agency is there for crypto at the moment? It sounds like it's all over the place in terms of what you were saying also earlier, and how they're mining it and creating nodes. If I got that correctly.
Yeah. So that's kind of like a lot of government agencies are actually kind of fighting or debating about like who has control or district or whatever over like cryptocurrencies. And then even within cryptocurrencies, there's different levels. You have like tokens who have done ICOs. Then you have like currency-focused blockchains like Bitcoin and Litecoin. And then you have like completely whole new networks like, I don't know, like Definity or something that's another smart contract platform. And then so it all like you just kind of have to, it's up in the air, right? But I think for now, the way that based off of like what I've seen in news articles and all that stuff, like it seems like they're treating Bitcoin and Litecoin like a currency. And then so by and large, regulation has been more about securities, more about ICOs and tokens than it has necessarily been about like Litecoin or Bitcoin. And so we do have to consider, like if you are a business and you want to accept Bitcoin and Litecoin and you want to sweep it into US dollars, you should definitely look at like AML KYC regulations. Yeah, so it's just kind of like food for thought. All right, we're going to go on to the demonstration. Welcome everyone to this Coinmesh tutorial. Today, I'm excited to share with you that we've added LND support to Coinmesh. Now, if you didn't know, LND is one of several Lightning Network implementations that follow the Bolt specifications and is being maintained by the Lightning Labs. Now, this is a pretty big milestone for us, and we're hoping that this will help app development on the Lightning Network grow even faster than it already is. And that's because what Coinmesh does is it creates a dev environment for you by automating the Bitcoin and LND nodes for you, so that you can go straight to building out that killer Lightning Network app. Now, as you can see, we're at our coinmesh.com website. We're going to click on our docs, and you'll see that you'll need a few dependencies before you start, which are node.js, npm, and docker. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this guy onto the right, to get to our Coinmesh GitHub repo. We're going to copy the link, and we're going to git clone this into our terminal. All right, now we're going to cd into the Coinmesh directory, then npm start. And so to save us some time, I'm going to fast forward through some of the downtime throughout the video, so just giving you all a heads up. All right, looks like it's done. We're going to go to localhost 9000. And when we do, we'll see the Coinmesh UI. All right, now we're going to create a new project. And from here, you can create a new directory. I'm going to call it Reckless, which is fitting because not only is LND in beta, but Coinmesh is in alpha, but we're rapidly approaching to beta soon. We're going to call this project Honey, let's say Bitcoin, Honey BTC. And the description, we'll call it Badger. Now we're going to choose our data source. We offer Bitcoin-D, Litecoin-D, and Bitcoin-D plus LND support. LTCD and BTCD are also on our roadmap. Now, what we've done for you is we've pre-packaged these wallet skeletons for all our data sources. This serves two purposes. First, we think that almost every project will need some type of wallet functionality, so we've provided a generic wallet skeleton for you. And secondly, this can serve as a template to see how to use Coinmesh to build out your project. And so the pre-package that we're going to choose is both Bitcoin-D and LND. And as you can see, it has Bitcoin-D and LND as its data source. It has Bitcoin-D and LND adapters. And our logic service is served via HTTP. And finally, our client-side application is an Aurelia skeleton. And in case you didn't know, the Lightning Network will make Bitcoin payments instant. And as it stands right now, merchants typically have to wait 1 to 6 confirmations for their payments to be secured. And that can take up to an hour sometimes. And so with the LN, the payments will be instantaneous. Also, it pushes all the transactions off-chain so it doesn't bloat Bitcoin's blockchain to help it scale. All right, we're going to click Next. And what we're going to see is an overview of the project. As you can see, it has the project name, it has the description, it has the client app, the logic services, and the adapters, and also our data sources. We're going to click Create. And you'll see this beautiful UI that we just put up. So one thing I wanted to show you real quick was that if you click on the data source, you'll notice it gives you options to choose between regtest, testnet, mainnet. Now Coinmesh sets up your environment in regtest by default. Testnet and mainnet isn't currently available, but it will be very soon. All right, let's go back to the project homepage. You could click start all containers, but what I wanted to do was to start these containers individually, so I can take you step by step to see what's happening underneath the covers. So I'm going to click Start Bitcoin-D, and it's going to start Bitcoin-D for us. And in the beginning, when you first download Coinmesh and set up your first wallet skeleton, it can take a while. And that's because it has to set up the containers, the images, and dependencies for you. But afterwards, if you mount or create another project, it'll go by a lot faster. All right, now that Bitcoin-D is done, next we're going to start our LND container. All right, looks like it's done. And so we see here that LND shows lncli create. So you basically initialized LND after everything has been installed, and now we're going to start our application container. And the app container is going to create a wallet for you and also set up the wallet skeleton. Okay, so we're going to scroll down to the bottom to see when Coinmesh starts serving the client app to local 9001. Looks like it's done. So in order to see our LND wallet, we just have to open localhost 9001. You can do this by clicking this button here. And there you go. This is our LND wallet skeleton. Okay, so let's go back to the Coinmesh UI real quick. You'll notice that we've provided some buttons for you. This is super useful. Rather than putting CLI commands, you just have to push a button. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is generate some blocks, get some Bitcoin, and activate SegWit for the Lightning Network. And I think Bitcoin needs about 400 or so blocks for that to happen, for SegWit to activate. So why don't we just put in 450 and let's do some Bitcoin mining. Look at that. If only Bitcoin were real, oh man, we'd be so rich. Okay, so you'll see a quick confirmation on the top right that generating the blocks were successful. Now, all the block rewards from the blocks you just generated are actually sitting in your Bitcoin wallet. That's why when you go to the LND wallet, it's empty. So we've got to send some Bitcoin from our Bitcoin wallet to our LND wallet. To do that, let's create a new address, copy that address, then we're going to go back to Coinmesh. Then we're going to send some coins to that wallet, to that address that we just got. We're going to paste the address, send the coins to address. We're going to generate one more block. And let's check. Let's check to see if it went through. We're going to refresh this page. All right, there you go. We just sent 10 Bitcoins to this LND wallet. And real quick, you can see that you can even create invoices with this wallet. Just give it a description, then set how many Satoshis you want to send, and then click on the invoice tab and you'll be able to see all the details. Now from here, to create a fully fleshed out dev environment for the Lightning Network, it gets a bit complicated. You'll need to set up another LND node in a local container so that you can open a channel with it to actually send payments. Unfortunately, you can't open a channel with yourself. But if you join us on Slack, I'm going to volunteer Patrick, the CTO of BlockFuse, to walk you through how you can set that up locally for yourself. Now, before we end, I wanted to show you a couple more tools we've made available for you. So let's go back to Coinmesh. One cool feature we've added is to continuously generate blocks every 10 seconds or so. This will save you a lot of going back and forth when you want to test transactions for your project. So we can just click generate blocks and Coinmesh will make blocks for you every 10 seconds or so. And one last thing I wanted to show you is that Coinmesh also sets up your configuration files for your Bitcoin D and LND. So let's open up Sublime. Go into our directory, look at data sources, LND, and here's lnd.conf. But I also want to mention that if we go back to Coinmesh real quick, you can see that the conf files are auto-generated for you. But what we're going to do is we're going to open lnd.conf in our Sublime. I'm going to change the RPC username to eCurrencyHodler because that's my Twitter handle. I'm going to save it. And what you'll see is that the LND conf file has changed in the Coinmesh UI. Cool. And so this is how Coinmesh sets up a development environment for you. From here on out, you can go to Sublime or text editor to start building up your project. All right. So let's shut down Coinmesh. We've got to stop all containers, unmount the project, and then cancel the processes in the terminal. All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Hopefully this encourages and inspires you to start building on the Lightning Network. And we're just excited about all the tools and all the applications that hopefully will come out of this by making this whole process easier. Okay, well, take care, everyone, and happy building.
Cool. So that's kind of all that I had for today. Did you guys have any questions?
How do you keep the wallet and the keys secure? Because when you create a wallet, my understanding is that there's those private keys that you get.
Yeah.
And you said you don't show those currently?
Yeah. So thankfully, like this is in reg test, and we are in alpha, and like we're quickly moving to a beta. But this is just kind of like a demo to kind of show you like how Coinmesh works and the power of like building an app and how to like share apps and mount applications. And so like, yeah, so there are different ways to think through about wallet security, especially if they're like hosted online. Probably like the ideal standard for businesses to do is to have like to create separate nodes that have separate functions. So for example, you can have a node that's dedicated just to making sure and checking to see like you receive transactions, and then you have a node that's only dedicated to like sending, right? But then if you just have like a sending node, what you would do is you would strip it from its ability to sign transactions, and you would create and you would hold your private keys or whatever in like cold storage, and then you would just need to have to develop a mechanism where you sign the transaction offline, send it, and just send the transaction that you just signed, and then send it to the nodes, and the nodes will pick it up, and then they'll just like kind of relay it out for you. And so, yeah, that's stuff that we could help you think through if you join the Slack. Other things to kind of think through would be like multi-sig options, so multi-signature wallet options. That means like you have one address and there are multiple owners of that address. So let's say we have a 2 or 3 multi-sig address. So that's 3 owners to this one address, but in order for transactions to get sent out, you need 2 signatures. And so let's say one person gets compromised, that transaction is not going to go anywhere unless the second person in a different area signs the transaction too. So that's another way you can kind of mitigate against being hacked or something like that. Cool. So yeah, I had wished to kind of demonstrate a little bit about the Lightning Network to you guys, but I'm going to do a meetup. I'm going to break down how the Lightning Network actually works via multi-sig wallets. You guys can scan that. That's going to be November 11th on a Sunday. It's going to be in Anaheim. So if you guys are in that area, come check me out. It's going to be at the first Litecoin meetup in Orange County. So I'm super stoked. I'm hosting it. Going to do a giveaway. Going to give like a hat. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyways, we're also going to do an app development class. So if you guys are interested in for an in-depth course on how to build an application on top of Bitcoin or Litecoin using Coinmesh, sign up for this. It's going to be $500 per person. It's going to be a 4-hour intensive class. And I'm going to be working with VJ and TJ to kind of help host that class here. And then so if you scan this, it'll send you to a Google Doc, and you just put in your email, and then you say whether you're from LA or OC, and you're good to go. Cool? All right. So that's kind of it for me on my end. Do you guys have any Q&A or any questions that I can answer? Yes. Yeah, our main competitor. So that's like what I feel so excited about Coinmesh is I actually don't see anything in the market that does what we do, right? Like what you just saw of like how to generate blocks and that whole user interface, like all that you have to do through the CLI commands on via terminal, and it can be really it can be kind of rough, right? But we automated that whole process for you just by clicking a button, and like you're good to go. Like the people that kind of come to mind might be like Hyperledger. They're an open source blockchain platform. IBM is using them. Other people are using them, but they're more focused on private blockchains. I think Blockstack might be somebody who's kind of doing what we're doing, but I think they might be a little bit more restrictive. Like you have to sign up for their services and use their APIs, but like everything for us is like hosted on your own hardware, and so that we feel like that's what kind of like distinguishes us. So yeah.
I think like just to add to his point, not to like speak for you.
Yeah.
But, just in my interactions with him, with Andrew, basically, I guess I'll stand up to say it. Basically, like you get a lot of training and support. I think that's really cool. Like when it comes to Bitcoin and Litecoin, you guys are the developers team that I've seen so far is it's mostly you're on your own. Like you kind of have to go out and hunt through lots of forums, Reddit, whatever, Stack Overflow. But you have Andrew and his team kind of walk you through like a lot of the steps to building an app. And I guess like just to add to it, I mean, I know that Bitcoin and Litecoin had its crash or whatever, but essentially the world is kind of moving towards more of a world currency. That is kind of the nature of the way things work. You can probably, like there's one camp that gets mad and says we should be like more like our own country, doing our own thing, holding our own currency. But then, like, if you think about it, we're already working with other countries
So there's like a real need to have like currency between different countries, especially if the work level is the same. So you're going to see more of that. I think it's actually a good opportunity to jump on something like this, learn it while it's still new, so that your JavaScript skills you're learning from LearningFuse, put that to work on this. Like 5 years down the road, you might actually feel like, wow, this is a good investment of my time, especially if you can get trained now.
Yeah, and this is still a developing field of technology, and like we're still very early, and so like what we're solving like the talent crunch, right? And there are a lot of businesses who want Bitcoin developers, Litecoin developers, people who are familiar with like blockchain and development. And so if you get started now, I still feel like it's really, really early.
How big is your guys' dev team? I mean, you're making Coinmesh, and you're also making apps using Coinmesh.
Yeah. Okay, so my CTO did everything. He built out Coinmesh himself.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a freaking beast.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the model that we're going to have is we want to facilitate and foster like an open source community. And then as we see people build like really cool projects, things that might be aligned to what we're building, like the private IP side of our business, we want to contract people in our community who are using Coinmesh and who've demonstrated like their skills and like hire them to build out our stuff. And so, yeah, that's kind of like our model right now. Yeah.
What skills do you think are good to have when you're entering into the blockchain world of development? Like what type of coding skills?
Yeah.
Languages?
The Bitcoin D and Litecoin D is actually written in C++. So if you want to work on like protocol level stuff, you might want to look into that. I know that other people are working on, let's see, was it Rust? On Rust implementations. LTCD, BTCD, it's the Bitcoin node, but it's just written in Go. And so that's available for people as well. And there's just a lot of tools that make other languages available to you. And so it kind of depends on like what area you want to work in. Yeah, like web-based stuff, I would just say, yeah, focus on JavaScript. And that's kind of like where all these businesses are like heading towards anyways. But like if you want to work with like client-side stuff, like maybe like C++, yeah.
Do you think Satoshi Nakamoto is a real person or a group?
I have no idea. I mean, there have been people who've done like linguistic analysis and they've read his responses to people, and they think he is a group of people. Could be a she.
Thanks, I just want to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's it for me on my end. Thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. It's really cool to see so many people here who are interested in like cryptocurrency. I feel like that hasn't always been the case, and it's really cool that you guys as developers are interested in this. So kudos to you for being pioneers.